Hi fellas, Mark here, welcome to Friendship Shaving. I hope you're well this coming weekend. I'm going to put out a shave to celebrate our Mistress Day and to remember my grandfathers who both fought in World War One. So the razor I'm going to be using today is not a wartime razor, but it is a Gillette single ring from 1918, which is about the time and the closest thing that I've got. So with this razor I'm going to be using a feather blade. I'm a bit nervous about this. This is a slightly aggressive razor, and I've certainly not used a feather in it before, so we will see how it goes. One of the difficulties that I have with the feather is getting it out of the packet. It is glued in and then some, but we're nearly there now. There we are, you can see on the blade those big glue spots. There we are, my 1918 single ring Gillette loaded up and ready to go. And with that I'm going to be using, and I've had it soaking, my Gillette travel brush, which would have come in the same set as the razor. I'm going to be using that today, and I'm going to be using my derby stick, which, although it wouldn't have been around in 1917, certainly some form of shaving stick soap would have been around, so I'm going to use that today. And I'm just going to rinse my face slightly, and then I can get that derby soap onto my bristles. Before I talk about my grandfathers, my father was born in 1928, and by the time he joined up, he essentially missed the Second World War and was posted to Germany immediately after the war, where he spent 6 years serving. For myself, I wanted to join the forces, but I have asthma and I had it very badly as a child. However, this did not stop me applying for the army twice and then the RAF twice. They didn't want me. And looking back at the time that I would have joined up, had I been accepted, I would have had to go and serve in the Falklands War. So perhaps for myself, maybe it was a blessing in disguise. Who knows? Now, my grandfathers both served. My grandfather on my mother's side, Harry Wood, Private Harry Wood, was a worker at the post office in Darlington, County Durham, and he joined up with lots of colleagues from the post office and became part of a regiment that was known as the Pals Regiment, where there were lots of people from post offices and a gas board and various places that joined up. My granddad went off to the Battle of Arras and fought there and survived and came home. But today my story is going to be about my father's father, my grandfather on my father's side, Cyril Christopher Hutchinson, who was a private in 32 278 C Company, 12th Platoon and part of the 13th NFBE force fighting in France. Now let's get this is a pure badger brush, and we'll get this going. Well, my grandfather went to war, as many young men do, and went to the front line in 1916. He was heavily involved in the fighting. And one morning when the whistles blew, the men went over the top. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, it's a sure sign to the enemy, isn't it? Those whistles blowing just signals to the enemy that target practice is about to begin. From what I've read, the men walked. The idea was, I believe, that if they ran to the German lines, they'd be out of breath and unable to fight properly when they got there. So I think the idea was that they would conserve their energy. Anyway, Cyril was shelled and shot and lay for 3 days bleeding out in a shell crater. I mean, I just imagine the scenery of that time. You know, there would have been no trees, they would have been shelled out of existence and burned away. There would have been no grass, there would have just been mud everywhere. And my uncle was shot a couple of times, and as I say, he got shelled and blown into a crater where he lay for 3 days. And I just want to read out a poem by Wilfred Owen, which I like very much. It's called The Last Laugh, and I will read it as I do my first pass. "Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm hit," he said, and died. Whether he vainly cursed or prayed, indeed the bullets chirped in vain, vain, vain. The machine guns chuckled, tut tut, tut tut, and the big gun guffawed. Another sighed. "Oh, Mother, Mother, Dad," then smiled at nothing, childlike, being dead, and the lofty shrapnel gestured leisurely, "Fool," and the splinters splat and tattered. "My love," one moaned. love languid seemed his mood, till slowly lowered, his whole face kissed the mud, and the bayonet's long teeth grinned, ravels of shells hooted and groaned, and the gas hissed. Well, my grandfather survived. He lay in that shell hole, or that shell crater, for 3 days. Listening to the moans and cries of those men around him that had also been hit and were in a similar position, and no doubt adding his own cries to theirs. He was rescued by 2 soldiers, and the joke that he told was that, well, we assume it was a joke, that they rescued him because he knew the password to get back behind the lines. He was taken or sent to Belgium to a hospital where he was grievously ill and stayed for over 2 years. The army lost track of him, and his wife, my grandma Agnes, and his mother believed that he was dead. Oh, I just caught myself there. Be careful with this fella. It's going well so far though. My grandma even received a telegram saying that he was dead. Now, in that time, his mother owned a pub in Darlington called the Glittering Star, and it was very unusual in that time for a woman to own a public house. While Cyril was ill and while I thought he was dead, his older sister and her husband had Cyril's mother, my great-grandmother, committed to an asylum and had the pub legally signed over to them. Now, one day, quite out of the blue, my grandma received a letter from the hospital from Cyril. You ought to remember, I suppose, as well, that, you know, this is a time without antibiotics and a time when emergency medicine and surgery, as we know it today, did not exist. It quite literally was a miracle that he survived, and he got better. My grandma instructed a solicitor to act on his behalf once he found out what was going on, and this was all done by letter. And he had a share in the pub, apparently, and he got that share back from his sister and her husband. Of course, it would have been in his name in those times. And he gave the money to his mother, and when he came home, he instructed the solicitor, and the solicitor got her released from the asylum, and Cyril and Agnes took her in, and from that day forward he never spoke of or to his sister again, ever. As you might quite understand, he didn't want anything to do with them at all. Now against the grain. I'm riding ahead a little bit here, because this is quite aggressive against the grain. Now, if you were in the trenches, you would or could have used a very similar razor to this one, although you wouldn't have had a feather blade. I'm just rolling right back on the cap there. There we are. So my grandfather survived the war, survived his experience. You might be able to see his medals in camera shot there. And when I've finished shaving, I've got something else to show you. Cyril had, as many soldiers did, they were given a copy of the New Testament when they went to war. We live in a far more secular society now, I suppose, but I think most people would have been religious back then. But one of the bullets that hit my grandfather hit the Bible in his inside breast pocket and clipped the top edge of the New Testament and just deflected the bullet away from his heart. Now obviously that's still very serious, it's still going to go right through you somewhere, spinning, flattening, taking bits of you out. But it was enough that it didn't kill him outright. But can you imagine being shot like that? Being blown up and laying for 3 days in a crater hole with the mud sucking you down, unable to walk, the water filling from the bottom of the hole. Horrific, absolutely horrific. So I'll just dry my hands on what I've got there. I've got the New Testament here. This is the one, and you can see it just took the top right off there. And I've heard that story before, but I guess it happened a great deal because every soldier had one of those, and there were so many soldiers shot. And inevitably, if you're a German soldier shooting at one of the British or one of the Commonwealth soldiers, you're going to aim at their chest. It's the biggest target. So it's understandable that a lot of Bibles came back with holes in them. And this is a picture of my grandma. And that lady there is my grandma Agnes. And on the back, although bits are torn off, it says, "I can make out sweetheart, Agnes, and 4 kisses." And my grandma worked in a munitions factory And this is her in her munitions uniform. A very dangerous job indeed. Yeah, very wonderful picture. And my granddad carried that with him in his pocket. So, you know, quite a bit of history behind that little picture there. And I would have to say, fellas, that was a very good shave. I've gone a little close on my neck here. In fact, it is a little bit sore there. I can see I've got a little nick there. So I'm going to put on some alum block. But I do like those old single ring razors. Perhaps not with a feather blade. Although, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. My face seems okay. It is just my neck from going against the grain where it's really quite a bit sore. But I'll try that again over the next few days and maybe just go with the grain, and that might be enough. Certainly I've got a very, very nice shave indeed. And I'm going to use today a little bit of, go on, why not? I'm going to use the Nivea Men Protect and Care 2-Phase Aftershave, and I know this is going to sting. Ooh. Wow. That is stinging. So that, chaps, is my shave. I hope that was a good one and you appreciate it. And I'm just very pleased to say that both of my grandfathers survived the war and came home and led long and happy lives. And well, if they hadn't, I wouldn't be here. But for my Remembrance Day, Sunday, I'll be thinking about my granddads, who were the last men in my family that went to war. And just like to remember all soldiers everywhere, those who came back and those who didn't. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time. All the best now. Bye bye.